Welcome to the Business Blueprint, where entrepreneurs and business leaders learn how to work smarter, scale faster, and build better.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Business Blueprint. I'm your host, Joe Sandin, joined by Clay, who's remote today up in Grand Forks. So let's hope technology serves us well today. Clay, how's the weather up there? I know it was raining yesterday morning because my daughter had a golf meet.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, no, it's nice out right now, nice and sunny, so can't complain.
Yep, school started for Shanley yesterday. I think public schools start tomorrow maybe. And so I'm now in work and school mode, which is fun. I actually get more time to be at work. Summers are very busy in the Sandin family. So, all right, so today we're going to break our show up into two main segments. So the first segment, we're going to talk about staying human across the entire process of your business, sales, marketing, service, customer experience, in an age of what's starting to become maybe over automation and too much AI. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to shift gears and talk a little bit about company culture, what it takes to build a team that's truly engaged, loyal, and everyone pulling in the same direction, and why that might be your biggest driver of why your business either thrives or stalls out. So let's get into it. We're going to start kind of on the sales and marketing side. So Clay, I'm going to ask you my first question. So how do some companies hurt themselves by over automating their sales and their marketing efforts?
Yeah, and this is a problem that's been around for a while. I think it's not strictly an AI problem. We've all been getting, personalized emails for a long time that says, oh, hey, I was just on your site and I really enjoyed this blog post titled such and such. And it made me think, and it's just like, you're going to start this relationship off by lying to me. So I think that's one of the big problems is there's tools out there to help you do things at scale. But you have to know when to use them, when to rely on them, and when you're really actually making yourself look worse by an over-reliance on some of the automation that's out there. And that's not just the silly mistakes that happen where you get an email that says, hello, first name. It can be lots of different aspects of that initial outreach. And I think when you do talk about AI these days, if you're kind of a scammy company with a crummy product, I think AI video is the best thing that ever happened to you. I think it works exactly for your target market that's probably got very little sales resistance. If you're an established company, I'd be very cautious at this stage of relying on AI video because it really kind of cheapens the way you're presenting your company. And that goes especially if it is showcasing your product. People are going to have this natural distrust. It's getting more difficult, but I think the human brain is still able to notice to a decent degree I don't know if that image is real or not. And now you've created this hurdle in the mind of your potential customer of whether or not they can trust you. I say it all the time. People do business. Businesses are people. They do business with people. And a lot of that is based on trust. And you don't want to screw that up out the gate.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, and that kind of feeds into a question that I had later, but I'll jump to it now. Kind of talking about like what are some of the better ways to scale your company using automation. And I think the mistake that people are making is they're trying to scale the wrong thing. Like, you should be, so for example, in the example you gave, I think you should be the one on camera. You should be the one giving your point of view. So like when it comes to actually, I think generating the source content, take the opportunity, sit down, record that 30-minute conversation where you're actually giving your perspective, your advice, your unique methodology about something, and then use AI or use automation to scale the distribution, like to help you do a lot of the work to get that message out. What are your thoughts on that, Clay?
Yeah, I agree. I fall into that trap. I think we all fall into that trap of look at all these great tools and they can automate these things that we're already doing, whether that's mailing campaigns or email or creating advertisements or social media posts or really any of the functions that you typically think of with marketing and advertising. And we say, oh, well, we can just use automation to do those things. Those are the creative things. Those are the things that take thought and expertise and personality and really kind of emphasize the humanity behind the brand. You've got to make clear decisions ahead of time. What is worthwhile to automate and what should we never automate? What should we never hand over to AI? What can only we say and only we do that's kind of your unique moat as a business. You don't want
Hmm.
to make it look like everybody else's. And I think there's a great place. I mean, we talked, I think just last episode, some of the cool things I was doing with some of the automation tools, some of the things with Claude that helps in marketing. That should free up your time to do the hard creative stuff that really does move your brand forward.
So that's a perfect segue into another question I was going to ask you. What are some of the things, in your opinion, Clay, in the sales and marketing realm that you should never, ever consider automating, that you think should have that human touch, and you should not even consider AI or automation for that?
Yeah, I think a lot of my answer to that question kind of comes in on the other side. Like a lot of customer service stuff, once you have the customer, we'll talk about that later. Don't automate that stuff when you don't have to. In terms of marketing, if it is meant to be a one-to-one interaction, you either need to not automate or use it in such a you know, intentional way that you don't make it seem like it's impersonal. So you really want to make sure that if the goal of that interaction is to engage with person one to one, maybe not automate that. If it's clear, I mean, if it's an ad on a website, if it's a billboard, people understand the transaction here is you, one person with a message to many people, a TV commercial, whatever else. If you are trying to do some of the things that don't scale, we talked about that last time. A lot of times the things that don't scale are things that work the best. That is something you probably want to reserve for an actual, manual process still. And that's where you're going to get the biggest impact. When you try and fake it, people know that really quick. A handwritten note, you get those letters from an insurance, salesman or a car dealership that looks handwritten, and on the envelope it looks like somebody wrote the name and address, and you're trying to figure out, you open up and you figure out, oh no, this is just an ad. Well, now I don't trust you. So they took something that had value when it was difficult, hard to scale, when it was one-to-one and personal. They tried to automate it, and now I have a negative connotation with you and your brand. You've got to be careful with stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think there's areas and situations in a business where you need to bring the human touch to the equation. And it's very risky to automate or very risky to use AI. Things that require high trust. If there's high complexity, like in the sales process, I think that can be very hard to automate.
Yeah.
When emotions run high, so when it's maybe an emotional decision or it's an emotional conversation, I think it's not very smart to let AI or automation kind of run the show there. And then I think when the dollar amounts are higher, it's one thing if you're selling a $20 commodity, but if you're selling $1 million software development deal, it's very high.
Right.
It's just not going to work to automate that. You need the human touch in a lot of those scenarios. Do you have any other examples, Clay, where you just think human touch needs to be there?
Yeah, and I think what you just raised kind of helps you discern that. What is your audience? What is your price point? What is, the kind of the brand that you're trying to put forward? If it is impulse buying pizza, you probably have a different set of rules and guidelines that you need to formulate for yourself than if you're selling a vehicle, and if you're selling an expensive service, if you're selling, some SaaS, a software as a subscription type model. There's different levels of tolerance that your customer is going to have for those sorts of things. So it might be individualized to a business. But again, when you can come across as one person that has a solution to another person's problem, you want that to be personalized. If you're just trying to get some exposure out there, you're just trying people to know that you're one option among many, there's always going to be a place for kind of mass automation and mass messaging and things like that. The closer you get to that person coming in and the closer you get to that transaction, the more personable you want to be.
So let's talk about personalization for a minute. So like, I think back to the old days, when you think of personalization, it was like, oh, when I get an email, it says, "Hey, Joe," and that's personalization, or, some of those very
Right.
basic things. But obviously with AI, personalization has gotten a lot more powerful. But it doesn't seem like a lot of businesses are necessarily leveraging that. They're being kind of lazy. They're still using a lot of these old tricks that just don't hit the mark. I wouldn't even call them personalization anymore. They just feel lazy. So how do we really get true personalization back, in your opinion?
That from doing the hard part. The hard part used to be, oh, I'm going to write an email. I'm going to have to put their name in it. Somebody had to do that by hand. That was a one-to-one email. It was real. that was easy to automate it long, long ago. And now it's easier than ever to pull out facts from your LinkedIn. Oh, oh, I saw you went to UND, go Fighting Hawks. Like that does nothing for me. It just irritates me when I get those emails. The true personalization comes from understanding that company, that problem, that industry, that customer, whatever the case might be for your business, and then speaking to those actual pain points, those actual needs, the actual benefits they're seeking. That's the hard work that a person is going to have to do. Now you can make that a little bit more manageable by talking to certain types of customer and speaking to a broader group, but the closer you can niche down to that subset of who you're actually looking to serve, the better.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, so we need to take our first break, but when we come back, we're going to carry this same conversation into the areas of service, delivery, and customer experience. We'll be right back.
Well, welcome back to the Business Blueprint. We're having a conversation about really how to stay human in your business. We live in an age where there's a lot of automation, there's a lot of AI, and frankly, everybody's kind of getting sick of it. So, how do you emphasize just the human element of your business without missing out on all the advantages that there are in some of these tools that are available right now? So, we talked a little bit about more of the sales and marketing side of things. Now, let's have a conversation, Joe, more so on the actually delivery of that product, that service, customer experience, and things like that. So, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how do you balance both the opportunity to scale through automation and the risk of coming across as impersonal to your customers?
Yeah, I think the first question you have to ask yourself when you're thinking of all the things that you can automate and ways in which you can use AI is, who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the customer's benefit, or are you just doing it for yourself as a business? Now, I think that most things you do are mutually beneficial, but I see a lot of examples where I can tell that what was done is just solely for the business's benefit so that they do not have to talk to you, or that they can minimize how much time they spend helping you. And I think, though, that's where it gets dangerous, where you don't want to come off like that, right? You don't want to make your customer feel like they are an inconvenience, or that you don't want to talk to them, you don't want to service them. So I think it's a matter of finding that perfect balance of how can we use automation and AI to remove the annoyances, to increase the speed of information, remove areas of friction where the customer has to feel friction and they really shouldn't have to, and use automation and use AI to solve those problems, but then always leave an opening and a way for the customer to get to a real person if they need to. Like, I think there's nothing more frustrating than when I'm on an automated phone line, or I'm in a chat situation and there's like no way to get an actual representative. Right. So I just start doing all the classics, like hit 0, say the word representative, and I'm like, I can't get to somebody. And I'm at a spot in the transaction where it's becoming frustrating, or the amount of money I'm going to spend is too much to just do it without talking to somebody. All those things we talked about in the last segment, I start to hit one of those things that really matters to me, and I really want to bring a human into the mix. So I think you just have to make smart decisions about how to make that proper mixture so that you're ultimately, again, providing better service to the customer, and it should be kind of a win-win where you get the benefit as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key question: is who is this for? Is this purely, hey, it makes our processes easier, or is the customer asking for this? I took my family to McDonald's the other day because we need something quick to eat. You go in there, and now I work here. Now I've got to do the screen and do the ordering and do all this stuff. I had to clean my table too because it was filthy. But like, that's not for the customer. That's not. That was easier on their end, cheaper on their end, and they didn't adjust the price of the food. So those are things that the customer sees and feels, and it's not a win for them. So you got to make sure that you balance that risk and seize the opportunities where you don't hurt the actual transaction there. At the same time, Joe, we at OnSharp, lots of conversations that we've had, lots of companies. You've got to have systems. You've got to have processes. A standard process can make that customer experience better because they know what to expect. How do you take advantage of that? How do you utilize that and still tailor things to the customer?
Well, I think ultimately you need to standardize the things that the customer shouldn't have to care about. I mean, there are many standards in your business and ways that you do things that are the same for every single customer, and there really is no need to personalize. Then you need to look at, okay, what are the areas in which, depending on who the person is or what their demographic, psychographic, what their different characteristics are, and I might need to personalize that experience or use information that I know about them to just make the experience different. They may not even realize that I'm doing it differently because of their preferences. But it just feels like I think there's this magical way that you can make the experience feel catered to the specific customer without having to make it super obvious that you're doing it. Just a lot of the little subtleties of how you take care of the customer, how you talk to them, I've always thought that so many businesses have such a gold mine of information about their customer, but their systems, like, it's locked away in this database that nothing can really see and leverage. And what's great about AI is it's made it a lot easier for us to intelligently have all that in the context, so that when we're servicing the customer, we can just do a lot of those little things that are going to matter and show them that you're paying attention.
And there's probably ways. I mean, if you've got a set process, great. But can you have different streams of that process? Can you break down your customer by type? I was just listening to something about Claude Hopkins, old advertising man from back in the day, and he's working with a company that said if somebody wrote in and said, "Hey, I want to know more about your sewing machines," they would send them their entire catalog of everything, stuff they didn't ask for. He's like, "Don't do that. Send them just the catalog on sewing machines." When your customer comes in and you're processing that service, that transaction, whatever it is, are there subsets that you can kind of group people into and let them do their own kind of tailored stream? That might help as well. So that's one thing. But obviously, when you're a new business, when you're small, when you've got a handful of customers, it's easy to be personal. How do you maintain that as you grow?
Yeah, you're right. When you are small, it's easy because the founder, for example, has direct relationships with all of their customers. They understand them. They know them personally. I mean, it's pretty easy when you're small to make the customer feel special, give them a personalized experience, and just do all those little things. But as you grow, it gets harder because a lot of founders don't take the time to institutionalize all that knowledge and actually make it part of the process and part of the system. So you have to do that. You have to put yourself in a position where I always say, no matter who you work with in a business, the experience should feel the same as the customer. And that's how you know you have good process and procedure in place. So you have to just start doing some of the things that you have to do, having good CRM notes, taking the time to actually have check-ins with your customer, whoever the account manager is. Sometimes it's having leadership team do random check-ins with clients. You have to just start creating some, process-based things that you're going to do. Yeah. You can't bank on the fact that, we're just going to remember to do that stuff, or we're going to just remember everything about every customer, because it gets very difficult. Yeah.
Which is a perfect example of good automation. Automate those reminders to your customer service person for those check-ins. Hey, they first became a customer 6 months ago. It takes those notes in your CRM. Maybe it summarizes them and it sends a personalized reminder to you to pick up the phone, reach out. Those back end, under the hood type aspects are perfect ways to use these tools.
That is a perfect example of how to use AI without going too far. So in your example, I like how you say, remind you to do something, tee you up with all the information, but it doesn't have to actually send the email or record some dumb AI video. Just put you in a position where you have everything you need to be successful, and then you just have to bring your human element to it. I think that's a beautiful combination.
Yeah, one thing that we did at OnSharp, I used Claude Code, used the AI to build a tool that sends an email to you, to me, to our client success team that just is watching for news, press releases, new hires, promotions, awards of our existing customers. And it just alerts us to that. It doesn't write the congrats email. It doesn't, send out some spammy LinkedIn, tag or something like that. It alerts us to this information so we can reach out and do the human thing that really matters. On those same lines, what are some of those ways, as we kind of wrap up this segment here, what are some of those human touches that have an outsized impact on the customer experience? What are some of those small things that you can still do at any size?
Yeah, I think those tiny human gestures really matter. So things like, a personalized video for a new customer that they can watch, or maybe the founder or the CEO makes a phone call and talks to them and just thanks them for being a customer. I still love handwritten notes, handwritten cards, things that you would mail to people, sending a small gift. Gifts don't have to be huge. They don't have to be some large dollar amount. Sometimes it's the gesture that matters more. So like a $10 Starbucks gift card in in a nice handwritten note might go a lot further than, excuse me, like a $100 gift or a free iPad or something like that. So it's the thought that counts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the more thoughtful we can be, the more personal we can be, I think the more we're going to stand out in an age where there's no longer this barrier to putting out communications, to have all these interactions, more ads, chatbots, all these things. Staying human is going to continue to be increasingly important in the days ahead. So when we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to switch gears here and talk about how you can go about building a strong company culture in your business. We'll be right back for more of the Business Blueprint. Well, welcome back to the Business Blueprint. We're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about company culture. Joe, in the last 10 plus years, company culture kind of had a big fad moment there for a little bit. And it really just kind of came down to like, we're going to put a ping pong table in there. Oh, our office has a slide in it. And think of companies like Zappos, and there's just kind of zany, weird office spaces. And it's really just kind of this personality contest. The other side of that is, kind of the faceless corporations that are very kind of sterile. Oh, we're just going to put some slogans on a wall somewhere in the break room. And that's company culture. And none of those things really are company culture. So when people say company culture, what do they usually mean, and what ought they mean?
I think a lot of people mean a lot of different things. I do think it's unfortunate when culture just gets boiled down to the artifacts of culture, like the ping pong table and the slide and snacks in the break room and, things that are great, right? But those are just perks. Like culture is not perks. Culture to me is simply the way you behave. And more specifically, it's the way you behave under pressure or when moments are tough or when you're in a situation where things aren't easy. So I think that's what your culture ultimately is. It's not always what's written on the wall. I mean, it should be what's written on the wall. There should be alignment there, but culture is just simply how you as a team behave, what you stand for. And it ties back to your core values. I mean, your culture is you living out the values that you say you stand for.
Yeah. Why do you think that happened? Like, why did I can't put a finger on the date. It's probably had its heyday and gone away by now, but why did it really kind of get boiled down to just personality stuff and the games and the snacks? And we've got beanbag chairs. That's our company culture. Why did that happen?
Well, during the boom, I think the benefits became the branding. I think, perks are easy and they're very visible. So, I mean, when you're hiring people, it's a lot of the visible things that people see. They can't always see or feel the culture until they get into the company or they talk to you. So being able to brag about some of the superficial perks was kind of a good way to get people's attention. It's kind of the shiny thing that you can get people to look at and pay attention to. But at the end of the day, you get into the company and there might be some interesting perks, but what if the actual culture of the company is not what you want it to be and it's bad alignment? That's when you realize you maybe made a bad choice.
Right, because those things aren't bad. Like I would go down the slide if OnSharp had a slide. You could put that in. That's fine.
We would need a second
one
story. We don't have that.
I don't know what we're gonna do, where we're gonna put it. So those things weren't bad, but they were stand-ins for an actual company culture. They were just stand-ins for that stuff. So how can you make sure there's not a misalignment there? How can you make sure that the slogan on the wall is real and it really does matter in that business and people can feel it? They don't just see it in bright colors in the hallway.
Yeah, and people are smart. I mean, they will notice if you practice what you preach, right? They're going to pay more attention to what you actually do versus what you say. So you really got to look at your core values and your culture and how you say you operate, and that is the way that you need to operate. I think as leaders, one of the most important things you have to do is lead by example. I think one of the worst things a business can do is the leadership acts however it wants to act and does whatever it wants to do and just does not follow core values or follow the culture, yet they hold everyone else accountable to that. I think that's a very very fast way to ruin your business and have a lot of turnover and not build a successful team. But ultimately, a business is a team. We're a team of people all trying to row in the same direction. We all believe in something, in a higher purpose. We have a way in which we operate. We have certain standards that we live by. And I think one of the best things you can do is to live by those standards, hold people accountable to those standards. I mean, nobody wants to be on a team where, 8 people are pulling their weight and 2 of them aren't, and they're getting away with it. And nobody's standing up for it. I think you have to, why have core values? Why have a culture? Why say that you are the way you are if you're not going to actually enforce it, stand for it, reward based on it, hire based on it, fire based on it, all those things, right?
Because those values are a promise. It's a lot like the branding side for your public face, for your customers, your prospects. Like, that's a promise. Your company culture, your stated values, your core values, whatever you want to call them, that's a promise to your employees. It would be better to not make that promise than to state those things and not live up to them. Because now what your company culture is, you know what it is? It's hypocrisy. Like,
right.
That's your brand. You've made it worse. So you need to think carefully about what you land on for those, and then you really need to hold to them.
Yeah, and what took me a long time to learn was that a good culture isn't necessarily a comfortable culture. Like, there's nothing wrong with hard work and high ambitions. And I used to get, really trapped in I need to make everyone comfortable. Everyone's got to be happy all the time. Everyone should get to do what they want all the time, because I think I used to be more worried about people just being happy and getting what they wanted than the company having a culture and what it stands for, and to ultimately be focused on the customer. I mean, it's our job to serve the customer and to follow through on what we say we're going to do. We did go through an exercise a few years ago to kind of redo our core values, because I just kind of realized, like, I don't think these were truly how we're operating. And so one of our core values is to walk through the fire. So I love that core value, because one thing that's really, really important to me is when we're in a tough moment, when like a website's down or something's not working right, like, are you going to be willing to walk through the fire? Maybe you got to stay late. Maybe you got to come in on the weekend. Like, this isn't normal behavior all the time, but like, when the job calls, are you going to stand alongside your teammates and jump in and walk through the fire and get through that situation so that we can come out the other side in a good position and take care of our customer? Yeah. And finally calling that out as one of our core values, I think, was one of the best things we ever did. And now we just got to continue to live by it and operate that way.
Yeah. And I recognize that for the business owner, for the CEO, you might be too close to it to really see things. But like, what advice would you give? How can they recognize what the culture actually is? What are some signs of what the culture actually is versus what is just written on the wall?
I think you should be able to see what your culture actually is. If you're a founder or an owner and you don't spend much time at the office and you're not around people, well, then you need to get in there and be around people and see the water cooler conversations, see how decisions are made. I mean, it's those moments, like I said, of hardship, stress, when finances are tight.
Yep.
When business is easy, culture is easy, because there's really nothing that's that difficult.
Yep.
Excuse me. But it's in the moments when business is hard that I think you really realize what your culture is.
Yeah, and it's those hard times. If you claim that you have a core value of, we take risks, we make mistakes, and then if someone takes a risk and it doesn't pan out and they get berated in front of the other employees, like, exactly. No, you don't. That's not your core value.
That's a great example.
So you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to, okay, this is the stuff that we state is part of who we are. It's in our DNA. This is who we want to be as a team, as a company. Okay, you're really doing those things. And you mentioned briefly, like, you need to hire, you need to fire, you need to promote, you need to recognize based on those things. Can you speak to that aspect a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in a business, if you've been operating for a while and you maybe haven't been good at living your culture, you're going to find that you probably have people in the company that don't belong there. So you got to do some work to figure out, if you need to make some adjustments internally. But then one of the best things you can do, control that front door coming in. So hiring for culture is really, really important. I think one of the worst things in a business is a talented person who's toxic, but the business just keeps tolerating it because of their talent, or they're bringing in all the sales, but they're a jackass, or whatever it is. So one of the best things you can do to help fix your culture is to control who you allow into the company, and just really have a high standard for hiring on culture fit first before you hire on talent.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, as a business owner, a high performing non culture fit has got ultimately has to go. And if
Hmm.
you have somebody that's a perfect culture fit and maybe isn't great in that role, maybe before they're out the door, you start looking around. Is there a better role within this company that they would excel in?
Hmm.
So you make some difficult decisions when you really are focused on the company culture.
Yeah, and I'm always optimistic. I think a lot of times we avoid conversations with people who are a bad culture fit because it's a hard conversation to have. But all the times that I've ever been involved and have been willing to do that, I think a lot of times the employee just maybe doesn't realize the ramifications of how they're acting, or they're not trying, or maybe they're going through some hardship. And so I think just open, honest conversation, transparency, being, what's the right word? Like having a heart at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
if someone's not living the
Yeah.
culture,
Staying human.
don't go into it thinking it's all intentional necessarily. Like try to get to the root of
Yeah.
what it is and have a good conversation, and maybe you'll solve it. So maybe they are a great fit. They're just, not exhibiting the culture the way they should be.
Yeah. And so when you're doing this well, when the slogans on the wall is really how you operate, and that's really how people treat one another in the business, all that's going well, how does that impact in performance? Not just whether or not people like working somewhere, which is great. You don't want turnover, you want people to enjoy their jobs. How does that impact just the health and the vitality of the business itself?
Well, again, it's like a sports team. When everyone's practicing hard, putting in the reps, pulling their weight, doing their job, when everyone understands what success looks like, um, everyone wants to be on a winning team, right? I think everyone wants to work at a company where everything is successful, everyone's doing well, everyone's paid well. Um, when you really nail the culture, things will go well in the business when everyone's pulling their weight. And then again, there's just tons of benefits: promotional opportunities, better pay, better bonuses. It's just more enjoyable to come to work. I mean, we all want to be
Yeah.
surrounded by people that do what they say they're going to do, right? And it's just healthy to be. Accountability is healthy. Accountability doesn't have to be a negative word. I think accountability is a positive word, and you need, again, to have transparency. People can't be held accountable to things that they don't understand or know that they're being held accountable for. So again, you have to be very clear with everyone what they're accountable for, what success looks like, how you hire, how you fire, what they got to do to get a promotion, what do they need to do to get rewarded. The more clear you make that, the easier it is for people to perform and live the culture.
Absolutely. We're going to take another break here, but when we come back, we're going to continue this culture conversation and look at some practical steps that you can take as a business to instill a good company culture and protect it. We'll be right back for more on the Business Blueprint. Well, welcome back. We've been having a conversation about company culture, how to build it, how to protect it, how to actually live it inside your business. Joe, as we wrapped up the last segment, you were talking about the importance of accountability and how holding people accountable to the way that we've all agreed upon is how we're going to operate is really important. Doesn't have to be a negative thing. Can you go on a little bit more about how do you create accountability without becoming harsh and joyless in the company?
Well, again, I think accountability is a positive thing. It like it doesn't have to mean you're harsh. I just like we're all we're all here to get a job done. We're all here to service the customer. I think one of the worst things companies do. I mean, everyone holds people accountable to something, and I think where businesses fail is they're bad at communicating what they're holding you accountable to. So, I think the key in doing it right is just being very black and white, transparent, being open and honest, like being a really good communicator, and making sure everyone in the company knows. Like at OnSharp, we on our accountability chart, like on our org chart, everyone has their 5 major roles and responsibilities. So like it's very, very clear. Okay, you sit in this box. These are the 5 things that we hold you accountable for. And then we're also very big on metrics and scorecards. So it's like, okay, what's your number? What are your numbers? Like, what are the numbers that you need to pay attention to that ultimately matter in your job? And the more transparent you are, and that's all accountability, right? You're holding them accountable to their job functions. You're holding them accountable to certain numbers that you need to hit. And that's a positive, healthy thing. And I think what I try to do as a leader, when a person is maybe not performing their functions properly or hitting their numbers, then it's all about how do you get in and help them? Like, don't make them feel like they're stuck on an island all by themselves to figure it out. Have you given them proper coaching? Have you given them proper training? Make sure that you do everything that you can as the employer and as the leader to set them up for success.
Yeah, and so much of that we said a lot in the last segment about the over automation, like just you have to treat people like people. That's true on the inside of the business
Mm-hmm.
too. Just people are people. They got stuff going on, and you got to treat them like people. And you don't assume that you know everything that's behind different aspects of how they're performing. You got to go in there, have conversations, and see
Mm-hmm.
what you can do to be helpful.
Yep.
So what as a leader, how can you build a culture? How do you go about emphasizing and reinforcing this so that people enjoy their work, but they still perform at a high level? How do you build that?
Yeah, again, it starts with I think just clear expectations first. As a leader, so let's just say you're starting a business all by yourself, and you're going to start hiring some additional people. You, as that first leader, have to just be very clear on expectations with people. I like to give people ownership, so like people want autonomy to get the job done. Like I think there's very few people that want to be told exactly every single step they need to take. So I like to give people ownership of what they're doing and let them, create the outcome. Surround yourself with good people. So again, going back to hiring, if you've got a great team, you got to surround good people with more good people. If you start letting underperformers in or toxic people or people that don't live the values, that's going to make it very hard to build a successful team. Be good at recognizing great work. I think that's something that I need to work on. Like a lot of times I make the argument, oh, I'm so busy moving on to the next thing that I just don't have, time to give the positive feedback, but it's so important. You have to, you have to give kudos. You have to make sure people understand that you're noticing the things that they're doing right. So I think that's very important. And then one thing that I'm really, really big on, mistakes are okay. Like, I'm not saying people should make catastrophic mistakes, but like reasonable mistakes need to be tolerated. Like you have to give people some room to make mistakes because that's how we grow. Like some of the best ways that I've grown as an entrepreneur and as a business person and even personally in my life is just making mistakes and learning the hard way the outcomes of those mistakes. I think if you protect people from making all of their mistakes, then it doesn't really burn into their brain, the pain of the mistake. So you've got to give people some autonomy to do that.
Yeah. So what are some culture killers that kind of sneak in and leadership may not notice until they have a problem? What should they be watching out for? Because I think no one wants culture to go by the wayside. It probably happens incrementally.
The culture killer that bothers me the most is gossip. Like I really don't like drama. I tell people all the time, like I don't do drama. So if you're going to bring drama to me, I'm just going to make a decision and we're going to eliminate the drama, right? So I think one of the worst things that a leadership team can do is to get involved in gossip and drama and to make, and I mean, that's a huge trust killer, right? If you feel like your boss is gossiping about you or saying bad things about you and they're not being frank and open and honest with you, like how can you work in an environment like that? So that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
I think another one that I'm working on is, and I do this all the time, this, Clay, constantly changing priorities. I think a great way to kill culture is just continually steering the ship in a different direction all the time. And people don't really even know what they're working towards. So I think that's something to be very careful of. I think another one is playing favorites. Like you have to make sure that you treat everyone equally and you don't have, certain people that you play favorites with and you hold them to a different standard. So those are just 3 examples from that I could think of.
Yeah, those expectations, accountability, and really holding those things. As we kind of come to the end of our conversation here on company culture, what's a one practical thing that a leader can do this week to improve their culture?
I think that's easy. Just go to every one of your employees and just ask them, hey, if there's one thing that we could change or do differently in the business, what would it be? Get feedback. I think leaders are often terrible at getting feedback. I don't know if it's because we think we know all the right answers or maybe we're afraid to hear it, right? But I think one of the best things you can do is get feedback. So go ask your employees, what would you change? What do we need to do differently? And I think you get a lot of great information from that.
That's great. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Business Blueprint. We'll be back as we are always after 2 weeks go by here for our next episode. In the meantime, visit businessblueprintshow.com and even drop us a question. We'll answer on the next show. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later, Joe.